Hey, and welcome. Hello. Welcome to the YouTube channel for the Renaissance English History Podcast. Today, we are talking about one of the most enduring mysteries ever, namely, who killed the princes in the tower? Bum, bum, bum. If you're new here, very special welcome to you. My name is Heather Tesco, and I have been podcasting on Tudor England since 2009. And this is the channel where I put all of my old podcast episodes, other content, interviews, stuff that doesn't necessarily make it into a whole episode. So before we get started, I want to show you the coffee that I'm drinking right now, because I call this channel Coffee and History because I'm always drinking coffee when I'm doing these videos, but you don't always see it. So I thought I would share with you what I'm drinking today, which is a homemade iced mocha. So one thing, I make my coffee at home. Like, I don't go out to Starbucks, first because I'm cheap, and second because I like it better. And I always, not always, but sometimes when I'm really feeling like the vibe, I will put on the coffee house radio on Sirius, and I'll like pretend I'm in Starbucks. And then when I'll really add to it is I'll use like an old to-go cup, or, and when I lived in California, they had Smart and Final where you could buy like the to-go cups really cheap. I would get those, and then I would have a Sharpie next to the coffee machine, and I would like write my name on it and write what it was. And then I'd call my name out and say, iced mocha, skim milk for Heather. Then I'd say, oh, that's me. Because, I just thought it was funny. And these are the things I do to amuse myself, right? So anyway, I have my homemade iced mocha, but the cup that I'm drinking from today, this is a cup from Mount Hope Estate, which is where TudorCon is. And this is a cup that I took from TudorCon a couple of years ago that has a really nice lid that I don't have on it right now. And it was from TudorCon, from the Friday night welcome party. And see, it's related because TudorCon 2023 is coming up in like 4 months. I'm not freaked out at all. Not at all. I don't have any planning to do. It's all planned. Totally. I'm not a last minute person at all. But for my other last minute friends out there, this is an important message because I offer a payment plan where you can pay over the course of 4 months. But I'm going to turn that payment plan off in May because I need to have received all the payments by the time TudorCon happens. And TudorCon is September 8th through 10th. So if you would like to know what TudorCon is, really quick before we get into it, it's 3 days of feasting, learning, talks from leading authors and bloggers. We have entertainment that's Tudor themed entertainment. It's over the course of 3 days in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, with about 100 of your other Tudor loving new best friends. It's on the grounds right next to the Pennsylvania Renaissance Fair in a newly restored barn. It's an old bank barn that's gorgeous. They have weddings there and stuff. It's also a working winery. And we have parties there. We have the parties there. We have the talks there. Everything is there. We have time at the Renaissance Fair. We have a feast in the Feasting Glen with private entertainment from the fair. So really, it's an awesome time. September 8th through 10th in just over 4 months. So if you would like to come for TudorCon and you would like to pay with the payment plan, your time is running out to do that because I'm going to turn it off in the middle of May. So that's my story. englandcast.com/TudorCon to get your ticket and find out more. So let us get into the princes in the tower. What happened to Edward V and his younger brother, Richard, the Duke of York, in 1483? And who is responsible for their tragic fate? And actually, was it even tragic? Did they even die? I don't know. Let's talk about it and see if we can just talk about some of the theories. We're not going to solve it today. Like, people have been working on this for 500 years. We're not going to solve it, but we'll talk about it. We will talk about it. So to understand the mystery of what happened to the princes in the tower, we need to first step back in time to 1483. Edward IV had just died unexpectedly, and he left his 12-year-old son, Edward V, as his heir. Edward's uncle, Richard, the Duke of Gloucester, was appointed as the Lord Protector until the young king could come of age. However, instead of guiding his nephew, he seized the throne. So what happened? First, he took Edward and his younger brother, Richard, and had them put in the Tower of London. Now, this wasn't unusual. He said it was to prepare for their coronation. Like, you likely will have heard, that Anne Boleyn spent time in the Tower of London to prepare for her coronation. Like, this was a common thing that monarchs would go to the tower. The tower was a palace. You would go there to prepare for your coronation. So this wasn't that unusual. However, once they were in the Tower, that was when he had them declared illegitimate at a council meeting, and he seized the throne. The two boys were seen playing, like a couple of times in the grounds of the Tower. So we know that they were there. There was a rescue attempt to get them, and then they were never seen again afterwards. Never. Now, what I said to you just now, everything up until this point is pretty much factual. People don't really disagree. There might be little things like, oh, well, he told them this and he wrote that or whatever. Also, Richard, on his way to meet Edward V. So Edward V wasn't with his father when he died. This was common. He was the Prince of Wales. He was off, getting in his own separate household. So Richard had gone to meet Edward to escort him back to London. Along the way, that was when he kind of took him prisoner. He killed his uncle that had been coming with him, that had been traveling with him, had him killed for treason. And that was then why his mother, Elizabeth Woodville, felt like she needed to go into sanctuary. So again, this is all stuff that is pretty much true. There's not a lot of argument about it. The stuff that I'm going to say next after this gets into conjecture and gets into, this is where people start to argue, including whether or not the princes even died. And this is what makes the mystery so gosh darn juicy. And, we say this lightly, like who killed the princes in the Tower? These were kids, right? This was a king who hadn't been anointed yet, but this was a king, a young king who disappeared and was probably killed. Maybe not. Probably he was. We'll talk about that in a second. But there is a tragedy behind this too. There's a family tragedy with the fact that the uncle is a suspect. There's just a tragedy for a country that had been at war with the Wars of the Roses for decades. To then have this, there's a trauma and a tragedy here that I think we kind of gloss over. To say, oh, it's the princes in the Tower and who killed them, and like they're kids, right? And it's a mother who lost her sons. All of it is very, very sad. And I guess I just wanted to make that note because I probably am going to make some jokes. I'm going to be lighthearted about it, and I don't want you to think. I don't want you to think that I've lost sight of the fact that this is like a true tragedy. And also, I don't want to gloss over that fact. I want to make sure that even in the midst of, there's a distance. It's 500 and some odd years, 540 years. So, we can look at it and make some lighthearted comments about it and, say some things. But really, there's something, it's very sad that this happened. And I guess we want to kind of be respectful of that too. So the question is, who killed the princes in the Tower, if anybody? So the most obvious answer is Richard III. Alison Weir's book, The Princes in the Tower, presents a compelling argument against Richard, pointing to his motive, his opportunity, and the historical accounts that implicate him in the crime. It is worth noting, though, that his reputation has been tarnished by the Tudors, who beat him, and particularly by Shakespeare in Richard III, which demonized him, portraying him as a villainous hunchback king. Richard III is still the prime suspect, but it's important to consider the possibility that his involvement has been exaggerated or even fabricated by the people who sought to discredit him. And there are plenty of historians like Matthew Lewis. I'll put up a link to an interview with him, who, gives a more balanced view of Richard with less of the Tudor propaganda, and points to other suspects who could have been involved in it as well. So while Richard is kind of the obvious choice that people go to, there are other people, and we'll talk about them. And there are plenty of historians and people who have studied this who think that Richard was not involved, or that he played a very peripheral part in it. So another suspect would be Henry Stafford, the Duke of Buckingham. He was an ambitious and powerful nobleman. He initially supported Richard III's rise to power. However, they had a fight. Buckingham eventually turned against Richard. That led to a failed rebellion in 1483. Some historians believe that Buckingham had access to the Tower and had a motive to eliminate the princes, which would have tarnished Richard's reputation. and furthered his own ambitions, and that he might have been responsible for their deaths. It's also possible that he could have acted on behalf of someone else, like the future Henry VII. Speaking of Henry VII, he's another suspect in this whodunit. After defeating Richard III at the Battle of Bosworth in 1485 and establishing the Tudor dynasty, he had every reason to ensure that the princes never resurfaced to challenge his claim to the throne. So some theories suggest that the princes actually might have been alive when Henry took power, and that he ordered their deaths to secure his position. Alternatively, it's possible that he had nothing to do with their death, but he capitalized on the mystery to tarnish Richard's reputation and strengthen his own claim. So maybe somebody else entirely did it, but Henry might have known that, but he kind of just went along with the obvious pointing to Richard to continue to make him look bad and make Henry look better. There are some other more minor suspects, including, I'm going to have a hard time saying this, Margaret Beaufort. This is hard for me because I love Margaret Beaufort so very, very much. Mother of Henry VII, staunch Lancastrian, matriarch of the Tudor dynasty. She did have a clear motive to eliminate any potential rivals for her son's claim to the throne. So she had a motive. However, there is little concrete evidence that she had anything to do with it. It remains more of a speculative thought experiment kind of thing. It also makes me really angry because I don't think she did it. So I'm not going to talk about it anymore because I love Lady Margaret. I can't believe she would have done something like that. And, but I owe it to you, the viewer, to at least present it as a possibility. So I'm presenting it reluctantly as a possibility. Lady Margaret did have a motive. Moving on. Another intriguing possibility is that the princes were not murdered at all, but instead they were smuggled out of the tower and lived out their lives in obscurity. There had, of course, been that rescue attempt that I mentioned earlier. So some proponents of this idea believe either that the princes just kind of disappeared into history, or that they might have resurfaced later as one or both of the pretenders to the throne who came back, such as Perkin Warbeck or Lambert Simnel, who claimed to be Richard, Duke of York, and Edward, Earl of Warwick, respectively. Now, while these claims were ultimately discredited, Lambert Simnel, for example, spent his life working in the kitchens. He wasn't killed. Henry didn't kill him, but he spent his life working in the kitchens for Henry VII. Perkin Warbeck was executed after his involvement. I can't talk. His got a lot further, a lot more powers in Europe, believed who he was. He fooled a lot of people, and he had a lot more power, and the whole event went on much longer with Perkin Warbeck. So he wound up being executed. He wound up marrying a woman who was very high ranking, and it all got very, very messy. Lambert Simnel didn't get that far. I did an episode on Perkin Warbeck. There's a couple of things. There's also Nathan Amin has done a lot on the Pretenders and the House of Beaufort. So I'll stick in some other links here to other interviews and talks that we've done on that. So it still can't be entirely dismissed, though. It's still a possibility. Okay, now in 1674, so we're talking like almost 200 years after all this is meant to have happened, there were renovations going on at the Tower of London, and workers discovered a wooden box containing the bones of 2 children under a stairwell. Now, many believed that these were the missing princes, the remains of the missing princes, and they were interred at Westminster Abbey on the orders of King Charles II. In 1933, the bones were exhumed and examined by experts who concluded that the remains were likely those of the princes, although they could not definitively confirm their identities. And of course, to this date, the debate continues over the true identity of these bones and whether it's linked to the fate of the princes or if it's something else entirely. In recent years, there have been calls to re-examine the remains found in 1674 using modern forensic techniques, including DNA evidence. Supporters of this idea argue that it could finally provide some definitive answers to the identities of the bones and how that's linked to the princes. But there's some ethical concerns about disturbing the remains, as well as some questions about the reliability of any samples that would be available for comparison. I have heard that Queen Elizabeth II was very much against disturbing the remains, but that King Charles is much more open to it. I'm not sure if that's true, so take that with a grain of salt, but it does provide some interesting opportunities to think that we might soon have some more information about what happened to the boys. The disappearance and presumed murder of the princes in the Tower is a captivating mystery that has fascinated historians and the public for centuries. There are many, many theories, but definitive answers remain elusive. So what do I think? I'm a simple person, and I generally go with the whole Occam's razor sort of philosophy, which is that the simplest and most obvious answer is usually the right one, and we tend to complicate the heck out of things that don't necessarily need to be complicated. Life rule, life tip by Heather: don't complicate things that don't need to be complicated. So I think that Richard probably did it. I know a lot of you are going to be angry with me about this. I'm sorry, especially there's some Ricardians, I'm sure, who watch this. So let me just preface anything I say here by saying that I am not attached to my belief in this, and also I have no idea. It's just, I read some books and I think, okay, that makes sense, and there we go. And I'm not attached to my idea as like capital T truth. It just makes sense to me, and here's why. First, the motive. Richard had a clear motive to eliminate the princes to secure his position. Removing them from the line of succession would ensure that he had an uncontested rule. Opportunity. He had control over the princes. He had them placed in the Tower of London, and he had direct access to the boys. He killed a lot of other people. He killed people who had even been on his side after, if they contested what he was doing, taking over the throne. He did take over the throne. He had them declared illegitimate. Those actions point to someone who, wasn't a great person. You could also say, well, he was doing this because he really believed that they were illegitimate, or he believed that England, you could also say like he believed that England needed him as a king. And he was a good king during the 2 years that he reigned. He did some really good things, and he was fair, and people thought that his rule was good. And so it's very possible that he could have really believed that he was acting in England's best interest. And they did all kinds of like not so great stuff during this period, like murdering Henry VI, to justify what they thought was in England's best interest. It's funny how what you think is in England's best interest also coincides with your best interest. Isn't that weird how that goes sometimes? Anyway, that aside, he had a history of not being a great person, and not being a great uncle, and not being a great friend, and not being a great brother-in-law, and all of that. So there's that. Also, the historical accounts. So contemporary accounts from the time, such as Sir Thomas More and the Italian humanist Dominic Mancini, implicate Richard III in the death. Of course, this might have been influenced by the political climate, but again, it's another piece of evidence. All of each little piece you could maybe break apart and say, well, there's a problem with this piece, or there's a problem with this piece. Taken all together as a whole, it's some pretty compelling stuff. Finally, his actions, if everybody was accusing him of murdering the princes, and he didn't murder the princes, why didn't he just bring them out and say, here they are, princes. Please enjoy looking at them. I mean, that seems like that would have made sense if you had them. I don't know. So he never brought them out. Now, of course, playing devil's advocate, it might be that he thought bringing them out would lead to a rebellion or something like that. I don't know. I'm not a psychologist, but there's that. So again, each piece you could take and say, okay, well, there was this problem with that, or this problem with that. Put it all together, and to me, it seems pretty compelling. But again, who am I? Don't take my word for it. Do your own research. Let me know what you think. I'm just presenting the evidence. as it were. It's up to you to tell me what you think and make up your mind. So with that said, thank you for joining me on this History's Mystery. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. And don't forget to subscribe to get more History's Mysteries and other history content. And as always, feel free to share your thoughts and your theories on the Princes in the Tower in the comments below. I can't wait to read these comments. I'm ready. I am ready. We'll see. We'll just see. Who do you think was responsible for the prince's tragic fate? Did they even have a tragic fate? Maybe they got smuggled out and they became farmers in Brussels. I don't know. Maybe. It's an interesting story. So really, we got nowhere out of this. We did a lot of talking and we got nothing to show for it. However, we had a fun thought experiment and discussion, I hope. I want to thank you for watching. Life is hectic, life is crazy, and you took time out of your day to learn something new or think about something you already knew in a new way. And that shows that you are a very cool person in my book. So I appreciate your viewership. I appreciate you watching. Let me know what you think, and I will see you in the next video, probably tomorrow.